bring the Mashpee Board of Health to order this evening. Are we being recorded, Glenn?
Yes.
Okay, so why don't we start with the review and approval of the meeting minutes from the May 20th, 2021 regular session? I guess we're a little bit behind in.
Yeah, they are not complete yet. They have been written. It's just that we haven't completed the staff comments, and then we'll get them to you after staff comments are done.
Okay, is that the same situation with the June 3rd minute?
It is.
Okay, all right, so we'll pick those up next time.
Yep.
Okay. Is the town report a short edit, Glenn?
I believe so, as long as it depends on your comments, but I thought it was pretty comprehensive, so I am hoping that's straightforward.
Okay, well, why don't we take that up then, the review and approval of the town report. Do we have, let's see, I'm looking in my packet to focus on. Oh, there it is. So a lot of this is kind of the standard fare. You typically have opened with the list of services.
Yeah, obviously the COVID was the bulk of it. Yeah, everything else is pretty much the standard description that we do year to year, but the COVID was definitely our largest volume that we dealt with.
Right, and he covered it quite a bit, so that's good.
Yeah, I think it was important to do that.
Mm-hmm. Are there any comments from the board?
No.
No comments?
Nothing for me, no.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the town report?
Yeah, I'll make. Ernie, are you saying something? Because we can't hear you.
You're muted.
Okay. I can't hear you.
Ernie, we lost your audio. Is your phone still on?
How about now?
There we go.
Yep, we got you. Yep.
Okay. I make a motion that we approve the annual report for the calendar year 2021. Respectfully submitted. Okay.
I second that motion.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh, I didn't catch you, Kripani.
Aye.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
All right. You said 225 Monomoskoye is pretty quick, Glenn?
Yep.
Okay. So why don't we take that up, the review of the request for Title V variances for 225 Monomoskoye. If you could give us the background on that one, please.
Yep. This plan is before the board to allow the abutters to comment, as they were not given proper notice of the encroachment of the 10-foot setback to their property lines. We did hear from one abutter that commented that the board should not approve anything that will be unsafe. We assured that abutter that we would make sure the board would not do that. Other comments from before have been corrected on the design plan. And one comment on the plan was that the Cultec contactor C4s are called out to be H20. And the only way the H20 contactors get H20 designation is if they're used with stone. But in this case, it's in the lawn, and the units can be H20, it's just that they cannot be subject to vehicle loading. And the groundwater elevation was determined at a separate test hole, and so the groundwater elevation that is shown is the correct elevation as it was observed during high tide at that test hole. So I don't have any other issues with this at this point.
Okay. Would the engineer like to make any comments on this? If you're on the line, please feel free to unmute yourself.
I'm here. My name is Thomas Rue. I'm the civil engineer who did the design, and Glenn pretty much summed it up. The reason we use these Cultec chambers is because they are so flat, and we did have that groundwater issue. So I use these flat chambers so as to maintain that 5-foot separation in the groundwater. And the plumbing in the basement is going to have to be raised, which I actually made a separate trip there to go in the basement and verify or confirm that that could be done, which it can be. So it should be pretty straightforward.
Okay. Let's see. Oh, okay. I was looking for the poly barrier there.
Yeah, the poly barrier is right up next to the, you see the north arrow there? It's just to the left of that. To the note.
Yep. Yep. Okay. That's on both sides. Okay. Fine. In cases where we've had variance requests for septic, have we required the poly barrier in those instances? I don't recall if we always do for tanks or if we've just done them for the leach fields generally.
Well, for the tanks, we typically do if it's down to 5 feet. If it's 15 feet or less, we will for the leaching.
Okay. Is there anybody else, members of the public on the line or abutters that would wish to comment on this? Okay, hearing none. I mean, technically, I don't see any issues with this. It has the typical mitigations that we would ask for with the poly barrier to prevent gas migration moving towards either the owner's house or the abutting property. I do see that the corner of the septic tank does get within, let's see, we're within 5 feet of the lot line on that. Is that, okay, we do have a surveyor stamp. All right. Okay. I mean, I think I'm satisfied. This looks, this is improvement over the last presentation. So, anybody, do you guys, Bernie or Kripani, do you have any questions on this one or comments?
No, I agree with what you just repeated.
Okay. Someone like to make a motion on this one?
Sure, I'll make one. I move to approve the septic repair design plan with the condition that a deed restriction be filed at Barnstable County Registry of Deeds with a recorded copy provided to the Board of Health prior to the issuance of the certificate of compliance.
I second that motion.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Very good.
Hey, Tom, you're all set?
Yeah, actually the owner is handling that filing.
Okay.
Because I spoke with my lawyer, and he says actually, I don't do that. The owner does that. In other words, I sent him all the paperwork, and he is supposed to fill that out in the presence of the notary, and then they put their embossed stamp on it, and then he's going to have that recorded, and he's going to send me a copy of that recording and receipt, and then I'll forward it to you guys.
Okay.
All right?
But
Okay.
does that mean we need to amend?
So Glenn, can the installer go pick up a copy of the plan then?
Yeah, once the installer pays for the permit, they can come get the copy of the revised plan.
Okay, all right, good enough. All right, thanks.
Did you have a question, Harry?
Yeah. We're going to need to amend the motion from what the engineer just said. To qualify.
Why is that?
Well, we made the motion on correct me if I'm wrong, under the engineer's design. And what I heard him say is it's the owner's responsibility. Maybe confused, but...
Oh, no, I think it's okay, because the condition is that the deed restriction be filed at the county registry of deeds. I don't think we specified who needs to do that.
Okay.
I do think that falls to the owner to do. They just have to provide the copy back to the Board of Health prior to getting the certificate of compliance for it.
Yeah.
So I think we're okay.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Yep. All right, so I believe we have our first appointment now since it's 6:14. So we have a number of late permit renewals to review this evening. The first of those is for Berry All Food.
Be Real, yep, Be Real Food, yep.
Be Real Food, okay. Glenn, how do you want to do these? Do you want to comment on them first and then...
Well, let me just read the background to what we've done as far as notifying these facilities.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
During the first week of November 2021, per our existing permit renewal process, Mashpee annual permit holders were sent email notifications that their permits would expire on December 31st, which included instructions how to complete the renewal process for 2022. In mid-December, a second and final notice was emailed to permit holders who had not yet been issued their 2022 permits, reminding them that they would incur penalties if they failed to complete the renewal process prior to the expiration of their permits. The notice states that a renewal is considered complete when all required supporting documents have been uploaded and payment of the permit fee is received. Per the Mashpee Board of Health fee schedule, permit holders who fail to renew by December 31st incur double fees. On January 26, 2022, permit holders identified as having not completed their renewals were sent letters via first class and certified mail with notice of tonight's show cause hearing. A total of 23 letters were mailed. Some cited multiple violations for operating without a permit. Some of these permit holders are repeat offenders. Since that time, a number of them have completed their 2022 renewal, but others have taken no action at all. Several permit holders have begun the renewal process, but are still missing required documentation or have not paid their permit fees. Board of Health staff have contacted these permit holders multiple times through the online permitting chat feature, and many permit holders have responded to the messages but failed to provide the missing information and/or payment. Permit holders had until 4 o'clock today to complete their 2022 renewals or otherwise be subject to action by the board at tonight's meeting. An update on each status of each establishment/renewal will be provided to the board members at the time of each show cause hearing, so we can go through each facility.
And just for reference, when the permit I system has been in place for at least a couple of years now, this isn't like it's not like new procedures are hindering the
Three, 3 years.
the process.
This is the third year.
The third year. Okay. Okay. So why don't we go through them one by one? We'll start with Be Real Food, and if Glenn, if you could just give us a summation of what's missing for them, I suppose that would be helpful.
They've taken no action at all. They haven't contacted us. They haven't done an application or submitted any information to us.
Okay.
Is it possible for me to make a comment regarding that establishment?
Sure.
I've heard recently from colleagues, or peers, I should say, that they're actually they've been closed for a while with the COVID stuff, and I think they've gone back to their country or something like that. So for their lack of communication, I think that might be the reason. So I just wanted to let you know that part. I think that's why they're not probably getting back to this permit issue.
Okay, well, they didn't notify us that they were not operating, so we have to go on, assuming they are, because they only work on Sunday afternoons in the White Lion Bakery to prepare their, shelf-stable cookie dough is what they were making. And, there's been no notice to us. So if the board has knowledge they're not operating, then that's up to you whether to make a decision on that or not.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's kind of hard to impose fines on a business that might not be operating. So,
Right.
I mean, we would want to, I think, verify that information before we, totally let it go. But I see that White Lion Baking is also on this list, so there obviously hasn't been communication in that instance either. So
Right. And we know that White Lion is definitely operating, so.
So do you guys think we should continue this one to the next meeting to give opportunity for clarification on the operational status of this
Yep, that's fine.
establishment?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay.
We can figure out the real reason behind it if they are actually out of the country. So.
Yeah. Okay. Would someone like to make that motion?
Sure, I can make it. I make a motion to review the food permit renewal for Be Real Food to the next hearing.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right. Stop and Shop is up next.
Stop and Shop is in compliance. They're okay.
Okay.
Rory's Market would be the next.
Rory's Market. Okay. So let's take up Rory's Market then. It's 6:21, so we're still on schedule.
So they have a food service permit and a retail food permit, and they've taken no action at all.
No action. I mean, it's pretty clear that this business is still in operation, so.
Sure.
I mean, seems kind of cut and dry to me.
Yeah.
Would you concur?
Well, wait a minute. They haven't attempted to renew their permit? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
I can't believe it because they're obviously operating.
Yeah.
Hello.
It's a fairly large establishment. It's not like they're a new establishment in town, so.
Yeah. That's true.
So let's move to February. So Glenn, just a quick question on the imposition of fines. We would start accruing fines as of today until they're paid,
That's correct.
until the permit issue is resolved.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. I move to impose fines of $100 per day. So per permit type to Rory's Market beginning February 3rd, 2022, and until compliance is met for operating without a valid food establishment permit.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Up next is New Seaberry Country Club.
Nope, they're all set. White Lion Bakery would be the next.
White Lion Bakery. Okay. Technically, so it's 6:23. Gotta wait. Their appointment's technically at 6:24, so I'll just wait 1 minute and give them whatever opportunity to call in. Is that the time you have there at Town Hall, Glenn? I have 6:23 at home here. Okay.
Sounds correct.
Royal of Katuah.
24. There we go. Have to give them that opportunity. Mike, did you give us the background information for White Lion Baking?
They have not taken any action at all.
No action. Okay.
And they are definitely still operating.
Okay.
All right.
Is it just the food permit on this one? Are there multiple permits involved with this one?
No, it's a bakery permit. Yeah, it's a food establishment, but it's a specific bakery permit.
Okay. So do we tweak the motion in any ways, or we can just we can say food permit and that's fine?
It can be done either way.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So then I make a motion to impose fines of $100 per day per permit to White Lion Baking Company. To White Lion Baking Company beginning February 3rd, 2022, and until compliance is met for operating without a valid food establishment permit.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. CVS is technically at 6:30.
Yeah, Royal Health Group is the next, and that's at 6:40.
No, CVS is next.
So CVS has come into compliance then?
No, CVS, CVS is 6:30, and then Royal of Katuah is 6:40.
Okay.
And Burrito Bistro is the next after that one. And that's it,
Okay.
and that'll be it for the food.
We have 4 minutes until the 6:30 appointment, so
Do you want to do 9 Adequan? Because that'll take less than that.
So then we'll go to, under old business, item number 3, a review of request for variance from Santuit Pond Pumping Inspection for 9 Adequan Street, Kelly Robeson.
Okay, so the property owner, Kelly Robeson, participated in the last meeting on January 20th. The discussion with the board revolved around the accuracy of the GIS maps used to identify the abutters to Santuit Pond. As there was a question of the legal validity of the maps, the board voted to request a legal opinion from town council to determine the legal uses and application of the GIS maps. Upon further review by the health agent subsequent to that meeting, a letter was sent to the homeowner with the following determination. The GIS map states that the data contained therein could not be used for legal description or conveyance purposes. Additionally, the map disclaimer notes that users are responsible for determining the suitability of the content for their intended use or purpose. The initial order letter cites 310 CMR 15.301 number 9, which states all systems shall be inspected when the owner or operator thereof is ordered to do so by the local approving authority, the department, or the court. In this case, the Board of Health is the approving authority. The GIS maps were used by the board as a guide to determine close abutters to the pond. However, the board has the authority to require any property owner in the town to perform a septic inspection. Furthermore, it is within the board's authority to use the data provided in the GIS maps to approximate a 300-foot buffer around the pond, and at its discretion, to capture properties that they believe that have the potential to impact the pond. The board applied the order consistently based on the information at its disposal. I have placed the property back on the agenda for this meeting so the board may reconsider their decision to seek an opinion from town council. The property owner was invited to participate in tonight's meeting, and I did actually speak with the homeowner today, and she said that due to the letter that we did send her with that description, that they are going to get the work done. And she's going to let us know when the work is scheduled. So at this point, I think the board just needs to rework their motion, and I've given you a recommendation on that.
The first recommended motion would be the most applicable one, given that I've gotten in contact with you.
Yes.
That makes sense to me.
So that would be to comply with the Title 5, 310 CMR.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. Would someone like to make that motion?
I think I'll give it a shot. And move to, please correct my wording if I'm wrong. To order for Title 5, more specifically 310 CMR 15.301 in parentheses 9. Work be done by the property owner. Is that any good? Maybe I mixed it up there a little.
Yeah, I think we want to add on that any further appeal by the property owner must be through the Superior Court.
Okay.
Would you like to make a second? I noticed that I believe this is the owner trying to tap into the ball here. You can second, and then we can take comment from the owner if you'd like.
Do you have that sheet with the number on it?
So we don't need to do the amended part, right, Brian? Just because I can second that motion.
You can second that motion, yeah.
Okay. Yep, I second that motion.
Okay. I'd like to give the owner the opportunity to chime in here. So we take a vote.
Okay, Brian, are you all set with that? I missed that. Was there a final motion for that?
Yeah, we have a motion in a second. I just wanted to give the owner the opportunity to chime in before we take a formal vote on this.
Brian, I think the person that just joined on is for a different one. I don't think Kelly's on the line with us.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Kelly's not on the line.
Okay. All right. My confusion. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, guys. Okay. We'll go back to our late permit renewal subject. The next one in line is CVS Pharmacy.
Okay. CVS Pharmacy has a retail food permit, and they have not paid the fee. So they started the application process, but they did not complete it by paying the fee.
Okay. Is there anyone here to speak on this issue? Okay. Hearing none. Is there any discussion on this one?
No.
Okay.
All right. Well then, I move to impose fines of $100 per day for a permit type to CVS Pharmacy beginning February 3rd, 2022, and until compliance is met for operating without a valid food establishment permit.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Lauren Tide at Mashpee, they're in compliance now?
Yes. Yeah, Royal of Katuitt is the next.
Okay. They are at,
Royal Health Group on the agenda.
okay. They're at 6:40, so we do have a few minutes. I don't know if any of these agenda items are enough to get done in the span of 5 minutes, Glenn?
2 Windsor Way will be quick.
Okay. We'll do that. Under new business, item number 3, review of request for variance from Board of Health Septic Inspection Regulation 2 Windsor Way.
Okay.
I'm here for that matter.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you. Glenn, could you give us the background information on that, please?
Yep, I sure will.
Is that for me? Is it my turn to speak?
I asked Glenn to just give us the update from our side, and then I'll give you an opportunity.
Thank you. It's my first meeting like this.
That's okay.
Okay, so for 2 Windsor Way, the variance was requested with the following information. The house at 2 Windsor Way has been uninhabited since the end of June 2021. The house has been winterized for safety, integrity of the property. A septic inspection needs to be performed to determine if it passes or fails, so we can prepare to list the house on the market for sale. They said that there is a requirement for the well to be tested as part of the septic inspection. So they're asking for permission for the results of the septic inspection to be released without the well water analysis, and to put off the testing requirement until the spring when it is safe to de-winterize the house. to take the well water sample. If the house needs to be sold sooner, we can have the house de-winterized and do the testing then. So please consider granting this so we can determine the status of the septic system and get the house listed for sale, so it doesn't continue to sit uninhabited when so many people are in need of housing.
Okay. Ms. Silva, please feel free to add to that discussion, if you would like.
Yeah, so that's the basic summary. Since that time, the septic inspection was performed, and I did get the verbal results that as far as that part of it went, it had passed. And I told them that I was going through this process, and I had applied and asked for this hearing, so that way we could get the certificate and, you know, let any interested buyers know that it had passed the inspection, because at this point, I'm just worried that if we de-winterize the house could get damaged, or we could have a pipe burst where nobody's living in the house right now. So I'm just asking for an extension for that portion of it.
Okay. Glenn, do we have any precedent for that type of thing, or is this kind of a unique situation?
No, this is unique. The other situations that we ran into when we gave extensions was to have the property tied into town water, but in this case, there's no town water available. So I think that there should be some time frame given to allow the warmer weather to come and de-winterize the house when it's safer to do so weather-wise.
Okay.
And the last time I had the water tested was in 2018, and it passed.
Okay. Glenn, do you have a suggested date for requirement that the well water quality analysis be completed?
I was going to say have it tested by April 30th. The housing code calls April 15th as the deadline for the heating season. So I figured a couple of weeks after that, or if it's sampled on or about the 15th, it takes a couple of weeks to get the results. They should be able to provide them by the 30th.
That makes sense. Okay. With that, is there any discussion?
I don't have any.
Okay. Would someone like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make it.
Okay.
I move to approve the variance with the condition that the on-site potable well be sampled and analyzed by routine well water quality analysis when the dwelling is de-winterized in the spring by April 30th, 2022, or prior to the sale of the property. The results of the water analysis shall be provided to the Board of Health by May 19th, 2022, or prior to the sale of the property.
I second that motion.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, very good.
Thank you.
You're all
Thank you
set.
so much. Have a great night.
You as well. Thank you.
Glenn, check your messages.
All right, back to food permits. Let's see, our 6:40 appointment is for Royal Health Group.
Where are the
Glenn, do
messages?
you have any information for this one?
Yeah, hold on one sec. I'm just checking the messages.
It was there, you just had to scroll. Glenn, you weren't scrolled on the screen, go back to it.
In the chat?
Yeah, click the chat over at the side, yeah, move that. Oh, that's, you can't even read that. Conference line,
Hold on.
oh, there you go.
Okay, that was it, right?
Okay.
Okay,
Yep, it's fine.
okay. Sorry about that, just wanted to check. Okay, so back to Burrito Bistro.
Oh, I thought we had Royal Health Group.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Royal Health Group at 6:40, okay. Royal Health Group, they have a food service permit and they have not paid the fee. So they have done the application and uploaded the required information, but failed to pay the fee.
Okay. Any discussion on this one? No. Mike, come on.
I move to impose fines of $100 per day per permit type 2 Royal Health Group beginning February 3rd, 2022, and until compliance is met for operating without a valid food establishment permit.
Okay. Have a second? Second. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. 643, Burrito Bistro.
So they have a food service permit and they have not taken any action, so they haven't even submitted an application yet.
Okay. Any discussion?
Nope.
I have no.
All right. I move to impose fines of $100 per day per permit type to Burrito Bistro beginning February 3rd, 2022, and until compliance is met for operating without a valid food establishment permit.
Okay, do we have a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Okay, Glenn, you said the next two Sweet Waves and Sopranos have come into compliance?
That's correct.
Okay. So then the next one would be Nature's Canvas, Inc. Do we need to discuss that one?
There has been no action taken, so they have not even submitted their renewal application.
Okay. Well, we've got about 8 minutes in between that one, or between now and their scheduled time. So I believe, let's see, where are we at here? So we've done 2 Winds Away, we did 225 Monmouthcoy. What else do we have? What about 58 Buccaneer Way?
Adequate is done. Yeah, that's going to take a few minutes.
I want to take a few.
We could do that because it's more of an update at this point. But I know that the owner wanted us to go through the order letter that was delivered, so that's up to you.
Okay. Well, we could wait on that one if you think there's an item that we could get through in the next few minutes.
I don't, because the last 2 items are, or the last 3 items are going to take a little bit.
Okay. That being item number 2 under old business, item number 5 under new business, and item number 4 under old business are and then the COVID update. Okay.
$652. Well, we could probably try doing 58 Buccaneer, because we have 7 minutes.
Okay. I see in your comments you included a letter of support from the school. Do you want to take that up under just the COVID update, or is that a separate item that needs to be added?
No, I was kind of going to do it during the COVID update.
There's only one person on the line, RFM.
I believe that's Rob Mills for 135 Main Street.
Okay. I mean, I guess why don't we do 58 Buccaneer Way then? But then hanging out.
Okay.
Number 2, review of housing violations at 58 Buccaneer Way.
Okay, Linda, are you back on the line?
I'm here, and
Okay.
first of all, I wanted to apologize to the board, and especially to Glenn, that I haven't been able to get done what I hoped I could do. The weather has been atrocious, obviously, and it was very kind of you to give me the time that you did, because you didn't have to give me any time at all. So I appreciate that very much. I'm really sorry I haven't been able to finish this, but I'm still working on it. I'm going to get it done somehow or another, and I'm very sorry that I haven't been able to do it yet.
So at this point, we went ahead and issued the order letter, and that has a 14-day time frame for cleanup on it. If it's not done within the 14 days, then I will get back with council and see what the best way forward is at that point. So, but we wanted to at least get the order letter submitted and delivered, which did occur today. So the 14 days starts from today. So even then, I think that there will still be some time before any other further action is going to be taken, but we hope that it's cleaned up within that time frame.
Okay, well, I wanted to mention something that I realize this might not be important to you guys, but it's really important to me. When the weather starts to warm up, the mold is going to get out of control, okay, and that will destroy everything out there. So I'm very cognizant of that. Right now, the ice and the cold is keeping that under control. But the more important problem for me is that springtime is nesting season. I've been a vegetarian for 50 years. I really love animals. And the idea of having to take baby animals out of the box horrifies me. So that is motivating me as much as my desire to save everything. I'm taking this very seriously. I don't want you to think that I'm not. I'm really, really sorry that I wasn't able to get this done as fast as I wanted to. And also, I wanted you to know, Glenn is absolutely right that the boxes themselves would never, ever, ever get into the space available. But the contents of the boxes, about 75% of the contents of most of those boxes is packing material, meaning bubble wrap and, other plastics, styrofoam. And, the content is way, way less than the size of the boxes. So, and most of it is China. And there's just one other thing I wanted to ask you. It's the wording of this order. I'm confused about a couple of things. It said 14 days, but then it said 7 days. I'm really not clear on, is it 7 days that I have, or is it 14 days that I have, or is it 14 days plus 7 days? I'm not clear on that. I couldn't figure out what it meant.
Could you provide any clarification on that?
It's 14 days. It's 7 days for you to request a hearing from today. If you request a hearing, that has to be done in writing to the Board of Health within 7 days of today from your receipt of the notice. So the 14 days is actually to do the abatement of the violation, and it's 7 days to request a hearing.
Oh, can I do that by email if I feel like I need to?
Yes.
I have another question. How would a hearing help? I'm not clear on that either. I mean, I don't want to take up your time if it's not going to matter.
Could this be handled administratively? Could you get in contact with the Board of Health perhaps tomorrow with the Health Department? I'd like to move on with our agenda tonight. If we're not taking any action right now, I'd like to just kind of move on to the next item. And
okay.
If you'd like to appeal, you certainly have that ability.
I just have one more question, please. This is important, and I promise that I'm finished. And again, I'm very thankful to you for giving me this time. Okay, the wording here says, source of filth and cause of sickness. There is no garbage in any of those boxes. There's nothing like that. So I'm wondering why you use that terminology. It's just, I don't understand why those words are used. Could you explain that?
That's the lettering of the law. That's correct me if I'm wrong, but it's chapter 111.
Okay.
It's general law.
Okay, it's legal phraseology. Okay, now I understand, because Glenn already can tell you there's no garbage of any kind in any of those boxes. And the other thing is, I want you to know that I've been very diligent about observing any kind of animal activity around there. There hasn't been any. The only thing out there have been birds. That's it. I'm really careful about that for the reason I just told you earlier. So anyway, thank you.
Okay.
And I promise I'm going to do my best, and I'll keep trying, and I will finish it. And I'm really grateful that you gave me any time at all. You didn't have to, and I'm very grateful for that. And thank you.
Thank you. You have a good night.
You too. Bye.
Thank you. Okay. So our next item for business tonight is a bodywork permit for Nature's Canvas Inc.
No action has been taken by this applicant.
It's body art, just make sure.
Okay.
It's body art, yeah.
Oh, body art? Oh, okay. Body art, not body work.
Yes, body art.
Okay.
All right.
Oh.
All right. Well, I move to impose fines of $100 per day per permit type to Nature's Canvas Inc. Beginning February 3rd, 2022, and until compliance is met for operating without a valid body art practitioner and body art facility permit.
I second that motion.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oh, okay. Looks like our next one, we have a series of garbage hauler permits, Glenn.
Yes, Graham Waste and Cape and Island Disposal are the two.
Waste. Okay, so the 360 property management has been resolved,
Yes,
and waste management of Massachusetts has been resolved.
yes.
Okay. So then we have until 7:01. Thought some of the kids had put this down or something. They could have.
Do you want to go over the phase one septic? So I could do that in that time frame, I think.
Sure, that makes sense. So item number 4, discussion of Title V failures in the Phase 1 sewer project.
So in the previous discussions, if the board will issue extensions up to 5 years if there is a failure within phase 1. We did have our first property, which was 23 Swain Circle, and as I said at the joint selectmen meeting, we had a template that was drawn up that included the property owner's right to request that extension, which we have sent to the property owner, and we did send you a copy of that. And some of the options for the board in order to grant an extension. And I spoke with Scott McGann because he's dealt with this for the last 6 or 7 years, where they have had sewers installed in some portions of Falmouth. They've installed an audio alarm in the leaching facility or the septic tank, and the owner will pump when the alarm sounds. They have another leaching facility installed as an interim measure. An example would be to remove the leach pit and restone it and put it back in after the leachate impacted soils were removed and new sand fill was brought in. Or they could put a smaller pit in if they could go from a 6-foot to a 4-foot pit with stone around it, because ultimately it should only need to work for 5 years or less. And there's a pumping requirement that includes a contract to pump on a scheduled basis. and then a requirement to tie into the sewer within 30 days of the sewer becoming available. And in talking with Scott, he mentioned that many of the banks may not allow those extensions to be granted because they want the septics upgraded so that the title will pass clearly, and they just won't issue a loan on a house that doesn't have an operating or a passing septic system. So some banks will and some banks won't. So we may run into that, and that's something that the owner needs to clarify before requesting that extension. And we did get several letters from Falmouth that we can use as templates to send to homeowners, and also to use as the agreement with the homeowners if the board was to grant the extension. And Falmouth requires that agreement to be recorded at the Registry of Deeds. So those are all things that can be considered as part of that process.
So we essentially, what you're saying is we have a range of potential measures that we could require, everything from basically design and install a new system regardless,
Yeah.
up to pump the system continuously until sewer is installed, or, I mean, I guess depending, and the ultimate mitigation would be dependent on the conditions on the site. If we have surface breakout going on, or is that kind of the idea?
Right, yeah, there may not be room to put in an interim measure, so the pumping may be the only option, or putting an alarm in so that the pumping can continue without a nuisance occurring. So, and that, I think it gives us enough options to review each property on a case-by-case basis.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be generally case by case on each of these. There's not going to be any other way to look at them. I don't think there's no blanket.
Right, and because of the bank issue, the extensions, we may not see as many as we think because of that, because the banks won't issue the loan if there's a property transfer involved. The system's going to get upgraded no matter what.
It's interesting. Did Falmouth see a lot of that scenario coming up?
Yeah, they did. It was Scott who said that it's not going to be as many as you think.
Well, what a waste. Well,
so that's what I have right now for the Phase 1 sewer and Title 5 extensions. But we'll see if 23 Swain, if the owners want to consider that and come back to us and want to go through that process.
I see you have a couple of recommended motions that we could take this evening.
Yeah, those were left on. I don't think that needs to be addressed tonight. Those were just left on from previous comments.
Okay.
And those are things that we're going to talk hopefully about at the working session, because I think many of those kind of decisions will have to be made based upon other decisions on changing the Title V regulations.
Do my fellow board members have any comments or questions on this right now?
Not at this time.
I just have one. I guess it's more of a clarifying question. So, when the comments that Glenn made are I'm guessing that they're just strictly in regards to just the septic system failures and not necessarily us discussing anything about cesspools. Is that correct? So is that some different conversation that we need to consider moving forward, that, we have, if there are cesspools that we need out of,
Well, right
out of
now,
function?
Right now, my comments are solely based on properties in phase one. So it could be a cesspool or a septic system that's considered in failure in phase one. But your other comment about the cesspools in the rest of the town, that would be addressed at the working session if the regulations are gonna change to require any upgrades of cesspools outside of phases one or two or across the town, however is discussed. So those decisions will be made then. This is solely for phase one.
Thank you, Glenn.
Okay. If we have no other discussion, of course, we'll be taking this up at the working session, which I believe we have scheduled for next week, Glenn?
Yeah, I haven't gotten a confirm. Ernie, can you do next Wednesday at 6 o'clock?
Yes.
Okay, I'll confirm that with the selectmen to make sure that that time is okay. Ernie's the only one I hadn't heard back from.
Okay. And just so we know, the selectmen that are interested in participating are Selectmen Gottlieb and Cotton?
I believe so, but I cannot swear to that, so I'm not sure who's gonna come on their behalf.
Okay. Sounds good. Let's see, let's jump back to late permit. The next one up is Graham Waste Services.
Okay, Graham Waste Services. They did not take any action, so they have not even submitted a renewal application.
Okay. Have any discussion on this one?
No, I don't have any.
Nope. Right.
Something like to make a motion?
I move to impose fines of $50 per day, up to a maximum of $500, to Graham Waste Services beginning February 3rd, 2022, and until compliance is met for operating without a valid garbage hauler permit.
Thank you. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. We just have 2 minutes until the next appointment, so I guess we can just wait until then. On the remaining ones here, Glenn, are there any that we don't need to aside from Sopranos? I know that one.
There is just one septic hauler, and that'll be it.
Okay. So John's Pond Village is okay now?
Yes.
Okay. And which hauler do we need to look at?
JM Barrow Septic System. Septic Service. The agenda.
All right. I've got 707, so let's do Cape and Island disposal.
Okay, Cape and Island disposal, no action has been taken. So no application has even been put in yet.
Okay. On this one, I know for a fact because I utilize them as my trash hauler at home. They were acquired by Nauset Disposal probably 3 months ago or so. So I don't know, is Nauset Disposal in compliance?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
They're not on our list.
Okay.
So they would not need to have a separate if it's now one corporation.
Okay. I still think they should be getting in contact with you about something like that.
Right.
So, I don't know, would we like to issue a strong reprimand or not? Let the Board of Health know what's going on with your business? I mean, kind of stuff I think you should do.
I think we would at least request a written, comment from them of some sort.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I agree.
Okay.
I guess I don't really know what action we could take. We could request that. We could request that Glenn send us a disposal a letter, just requesting information or whatever it may be. I mean, Glenn, obviously they're going to have more trucks that need to be inspected and those types of things. So,
Correct.
that's definitely information that you need to have.
Yep.
So do we need a motion for that, or?
I was going to ask that. Do we need a motion? Is there
That's something we can do internally.
Yeah, I don't think it's that for us. So. We have a few minutes. Do you want to start on the COVID update, or do you want to wait on that until the end? We've only got one left, so we could just wait 6 minutes, or...
You want to do it? I need to get a glass of water. You want to? Christine's going to do it. I need to step out for a sec.
Okay.
Good evening. Some of this is repetitive from previous meetings, but we'll go through it pretty quick. As of February 3rd, the following actions are completed or ongoing. We've monitored epidemiological data from the Mass Department of Public Health and Barnstable County Department of Health and Environment. Participated in weekly MAVEN webinars and interagency local Board of Health webinars with Mass Department of Public Health, and biweekly conference calls with the Cape Cod Health Agents Coalition. We provided updated case numbers to the Public Safety Answering Point and the Town Manager's Office. We maintain the town website COVID-19 page. We provided the town manager, assistant town manager, and all town department heads with the latest COVID news, information, and resources at the monthly department head meeting. We prepared a draft letter from the Board of Health to the superintendent in support of recommended testing protocols for participants in school-sponsored athletics and other close contact activities. We communicated daily with the school nurse coordinator regarding new cases and frequently revised DESE guidance, including revised protocols that shift focus from contact tracing to monitoring and surveillance. We provided clarification to school athletic program staff on revised guidance relative to close contacts, quarantine, and testing protocols. We provided support to the Mashpee Rec Director in her efforts to comply with changing EEC guidance. We provided testing, isolation, and quarantine guidance to town employees who either test positive, are close contacts, or who are experiencing COVID-like symptoms. We maintained open lines of communication with administrators at congregate care facilities regarding cases among residents and staff. We continued to facilitate the transition of the full COVID contact tracing caseload from the VNA to the County Health Department in a manner that supported the needs of the schools. We scheduled a second local booster clinic for individuals ages 12 and over on Wednesday, February 23rd from 1 to 3 p.m. at Christ the King, and prepared a clinic flyer and facilitated the widest possible dissemination of that flyer. We coordinated the acquisition of a small supply of COVID test kits from the Community Health Center for distribution to at-risk residents and employees of the town. We maintained communication with the County Health Department regarding the status of 250 COVID test kits purchased through a bulk order. And we committed to participation in a COVID response lessons learned conference in March, facilitated by the County Health Department.
Thank you,
Do you
Christine.
want to come and do this part, or do you want to do that?
Are there, I'd like to swing back around to the letter in a moment, but I wanted to see if there are any comments or questions on any of the other items before we take that up. Brittany, do you have any comments or questions on? It seems like the caseload is dropping, which is a good thing. I mean, we saw our first zero in a while in the last update, so that was kind of nice to see. Yes. So,
And that spreadsheet that we send out, Brian, it includes a 10-day isolation, even though right now the isolation period has been reduced to 5 days. But we keep it at 10 because it's recommended that after the 5 days, if you are not significantly improved, that you extend the isolation for the full 10 days. So we've kept it the 10 days, but that list, you know, if you went with the 5 days, it's significantly smaller.
that's good to know. Let's see. Shall we talk about the letter from the school, the draft letter to the school?
We can talk about that. I don't know who's had a chance to read it, but if it does state in the letter that we reviewed the DESE, the latest DESE guidelines, and I can give you a brief overview of those without getting into too much detail, because those DESE guidelines and EEC guidelines are pretty comprehensive. So if you wanted me to give you a brief overview of that, I could, or if you want to just look at the letter, I can send you what I prepared for the description of the DESE information, and you can review that before we send off the letter.
Okay. I mean, I'd be curious to see what the information is. Would Kripani or Ernie, would you like to discuss what that guidance looks like?
Yeah, I would like to, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could give us kind of a summary of what that is looking like, the guidance from them.
So test and stay, which is the protocol they've been following at the school, is going to remain in effect through tomorrow. But as of February 5th, the school has opted out of test and stay in lieu of the optional weekly at-home testing program. In-school contact tracing has been replaced with this surveillance testing. Optional pool testing, which has been going on, it's also been called weekly COVID safety checks, They've been going on at the school, I believe, since the beginning of the year, and they're going to continue to be conducted on Tuesdays. They're done by an outside lab. And these pools can have as few as two people in them, or they typically have about 7. They do this double PCR test, which means that a positive in the pool or an inconclusive leads to a retest to determine who in the pool was actually the positive. And then those results are reported by email to the parent and to the school nurse coordinator by the outside lab that's conducting these pool tests. The optional at-home tests are distributed to staff and students starting next week. Pre-K through grade 12 on Thursdays. There's 2 tests in each kit for testing 2 consecutive weeks on Friday, 2 consecutive Fridays. Positive results are reported by the parent to the school. Approximately 400 staff, both of these are optional. You have to opt into both of them, the pool testing and the at-home testing. Approximately 400 staff, which is nearly 100% of the staff in the district, have opted into the at-home testing. Approximately 300 students of 1,500 total students have opted into at-home testing, but more are opting in every day, according to the school nurse. And participation is pretty consistent across the 3 schools. It's not like the lower grades are opting in more than the upper grades or vice versa. Close contacts, one of the items of concern or interest was close contacts within 90 days of testing positive are not required to quarantine unless symptoms develop. But per the Department of Public Health, if new symptoms develop within 90 days of having been positive and the individual tests positive, they consider that a new positive. And the school is actually seeing that they're either, they have to treat them as a new positive, and it's either a new variant or just a different strain than they had before. At this point, school health officials are not looking at vaccination status for anything other than to identify trends. They're seeing fully vaxxed and boosted individuals test negative with those rapid tests when they take them right away. But if they retest 48 to 72 hours later, they're popping positive. So they really, which is indicating that they need to have that heavy viral load, be really symptomatic in order to test positive with the antigen tests, with the rapid test. But as far as this letter is really focused more on the athletic program and any school-sponsored activities like music or theater, where the kids are in that 0 to 3 distance. And the school as a whole and the health officials are looking for support from the board to encourage all those students who are participating in athletics and close contact activities to participate in both of those optional testing programs, because they believe, and the health agents have discussed it, we support it as well, that is ultimately going to be the best way to ensure that the kids get to continue to participate in those activities without interruption. So they asked for this letter of support or some indicator that the Board of Health supports, so that they can provide that to coaches and families who may not otherwise know that the board is the Board of Health is backing them.
I would I mean, I personally support the letter. I think it provides the school with that needed backup in terms of recommending that families participate. And obviously, as opt-in programs, it's totally reliant on parents deciding to, to do that. I know within the athletics program, we've seen positives come up. So it's not like it's not happening. And I think we've seen some transmission between some of the students themselves in those sports programs. So I have a lot of concern over that. It's an opt-in program. To me, it should be required for school athletics, but this is where we are right now. So it's an opt-in program. The only suggestion that I would make is in the third paragraph. It says specifically the Board of Health confirms. I would like to propose that the wording is the Board of Health strongly confirms the need for students to participate in those programs.
Board of Health strongly.
That would be my comment, and I will open it up to Kripani and Ernie for comment as well.
Kripani, you want to go first?
I was just going to say, I agree with what you said, Brian. I'm all for students to at least actively participate, or parents to be cognizant about having their students be tested themselves and kind of being part of the school system. I'm kind of seeing that firsthand where, we see several students out and we see several of the students partaking in the pool testing and stuff. So I'm really glad that they have continued that from the last year. And it's been really, it's been very positive, and being able to monitor that and kind of facilitate that quick moving process where we can get people quarantined in the right amount of time and stuff. So yeah, I'm all for this letter and what's stated.
I can also support you, Brian. However, it's got to be, in my view, something that people understand as things get better. There needs to be some, in my view, my personal opinion, some assurance that it reaches a point where the science or whatever's next from our government officials, I need some assurance that, we're going to be looking at that again, so as to, continue to increase the time needed for these moves that are taking place right now, and will be. And that's my little bit of a concern. I don't want to see anything that's not capable of revisiting as things get better. That's all.
Okay. And I think I understand what you're saying. I think to me this letter being specifically based on the current guidance from DESE and the current I guess the required offerings, these two programs, the test at home and the safety check. I think as long as those are in existence, then this letter would apply. However, once those programs change or modify, then it kind of automatically negates the letter at that point. But we could certainly look at it again as to whether we recommend or not. Certainly willing. I'm always willing to take a look at those things because I think it's important that we continually review what's going on with this situation. So they're both opt-in programs, so there are no requirements. Parents who don't feel that they want to have their children participate in these programs don't have to. and that's certainly their choice. So that would be my final comment. I mean, I personally support sending a letter and supporting the school in their efforts to, control this. And unfortunately, this isn't I don't foresee this changing very much, even within the next year or more. I mean, we're still a ways away from the end of this, unfortunately. But that doesn't mean we can't continually look at it and see where we should be, as far as what we're recommending. So, yeah.
You have my comment. Continually looking at it is important to me.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And please always feel free to, bring it up at a meeting. And if you want to have it as an agenda item, I'm more than willing to just put it on there. We can have a discussion about it. So, we're equal board members here. So, if at any point you want to take a look at it again, feel free to bring it up and we'll talk about it. So, does anyone like to make a motion for this?
It's just the approval for the letter to the school, correct?
You don't really need to vote on this because it's just a letter of support.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it's something that you can agree upon and Brian can sign as the chair. So that's how I would recommend to go forward with that.
I can agree with that.
Yeah.
We can do it. Okay. So I can just come down and sign it, Glenn, or I can scan it and sign it after you give me a final?
Yeah, it was done as part of the COVID update, and it was not a formal line item on the agenda. So, and where it doesn't include any orders, it's merely a statement from the board. So it's essentially correspondence. So I don't believe it needs to have a vote.
Okay, that's fine. And I would assume that it is likely that this letter will go with whatever packets of information are given to parents as part of their ordinary communications.
We can certainly ask the schools that. We haven't ironed that out. This is something that we've done on our end just to give to them. So we can see how they're going to handle that.
All right. Any other matters pertaining to COVID?
Not from us.
All right. So I think we have one last late permit, which is J.M. Barrow's septic service.
Oh, yep. No action taken.
Someone like to make a motion for this one?
Sure. I move to impose fines of $50 per day, up to a maximum of $500 to J.M. Barrow's Septic Service, beginning February 3rd, 2022, and until compliance is met for operating without a valid septic hauler permit.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that is the last of our late permit renewals. That's the COVID update. I think the next item on our agenda is under new business for the review of the tobacco sales violation at 135 Main Street with Omar Inc. And if you could give us the background information for this one, please.
Yeah, I just want to confirm that Attorney Mills is still with us. He has been waiting patiently, I believe. And I'd have to apologize because he wanted to come on at 7 and I recommended 6:30. So he's been on for a bit. Rob, are you still there? Let me send him a chat.
Yes, I'm here. Hi.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
Sure, thank you.
Glenn, if you could just give us a little bit of background information for this, please.
Okay. On November 9th, 2021, a compliance check was performed by the Cape Cod Regional Tobacco Control Program. The sale of a product that meets the definition of a blunt wrap was being sold at the Mashpee Shell establishment. The product was called a Graba Empire Leaf, which is a loosely rolled leaf and not a hard cigar. The order letter had been provided to the board members. This is the third violation within the 48-month tolling period. Fine of $300 is imposed along with a period of tobacco sales permit suspension, and the board has the discretion to suspend the permit for up to 30 days. And the board did previously issue a 30-day suspension to Alltown Mobile for their third offense.
And just for the benefit of my fellow board members who may not have been here for the prior violation, you have dates of the prior violations and the outcomes of those?
Yeah. It was spelled out within the order letter. April 23rd, 2019, there was a tobacco compliance check where there were two violations. It was a sale of cigars at the incorrect price and also the sale of blunt wraps, which I believe was the Fronto loosely rolled leaf. And then July 29th, there was a sale to a minor in 2019.
Okay, I would like to give Attorney Mills the opportunity to present on this, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, good evening. My name is Robert Mills. I represent Omar, Inc. With me here this evening is the sole stockholder of Omar, Inc., Mr. Mansour Java, who's owned the Mashpee Shell convenience store for approximately 20 years now. It should be noted that in the first 16 or 17 years of his ownership, he only had 2 tobacco violations. The violations that have been referenced in the most recent violation notice have occurred over the past 2 years, primarily centered around the confusion in the Mashpee Board of Health regulations, which relate to flavored tobacco, which has never been cited for flavored tobacco, but more specifically for what is defined as a blunt wrap, which is difficult to determine exactly what a blunt wrap is. Mr. Chairman, you may recall, because you had some pretty strong opinions concerning blunt wraps a couple of years ago. In fact, you had suggested to the board that what the board should do is focus on clarifying the definition of a blunt wrap in the regulation and postponing looking at blunt wraps as a prohibited product until a later date, until the blunt wrap is actually defined. Now, I know at that meeting where you made that reference, they did vote to amend the definition of blunt wrap to include particular products. And at that time, it was the Fronto product, the Fronto leaf, and the Fronto cigar. Just for a point of clarification, what Mr. Java had at one of these violations was not a Fronto leaf, but a Fronto cigar, a tightly wrapped pieces of a tobacco leaf that are incapable of being pulled apart. Your own definition of blunt wrap says that it's something that can be pulled apart, that can be filled by the consumer with loose tobacco or other fillers like marijuana or something like that. The cigars that he sold are incapable of being filled because they're so tightly wrapped. If you attempted to fill them, you'd break them. So I think really the point of contention, and I apologize if I have to get into a little bit of history, but it's important because you go to the Sunoco station, which some people think is in Mashpee, and they sell every single product that's prohibited by the town of Mashpee. Same in Marston's Mills. You know why? Because they don't consider the products that we consider in Mashpee to be blunt wraps. cigars because that's what they say. This is, I don't know if you all can see this or not. This is what we're here for tonight. It's expressed in the violation notice that it's a blunt wrap, or it doesn't even say that. It's considered a blunt wrap. And I think, in all due respect to Mr. Harrington, he's the one that considers it a blunt wrap. The manufacturer doesn't consider this a blunt wrap. It says it's a fresh cigar. Grabba Empire Fresh Cigar. There's nowhere on here that it says anything about a leaf. And that's what we're here on tonight. But I do need to get into some of the history to really bring all the other board members who haven't been around as long as Brian up to speed. When they talk about a leaf, and if you look at the violation notice from Mr. Collette, he, in his violation, states that the violation is Grabba Empire leaf for sale. This is what was for sale, the Grabba cigar. This is a leaf. Okay? This is a whole tobacco leaf right here. This is not glued together. This is how it came off of the plant, and it's rolled up. Those are prohibited. Okay? And he doesn't sell those. This he sells because it's a cigar. I got to give you some historical background. So, we believe that the process is fractioned, and the reason I say that it's fractioned is because there's no list available that a retailer can look to determine what is prohibited and what's allowed. There's no list. I've asked for it, and Glenn has, openly said there is no list that a retailer can look to determine what the town of Mashpee prohibits and what they allow. It's on a case-by-case basis. Historically, the town promulgated these tobacco regulations, I believe, in 2019, and they were confusing. And so Mr. Java asked for a meeting with Mr. Harrington to determine what products he could carry and what products he couldn't carry. Subsequently, Mr. Harrington put a meeting together with the county inspector, Bob Collette, and they all met at the Mashpee Shell Station. Mr. Java was there. Mr. Shahid Chaudhry was there, who owns the gas station on Route 151 across from Andy's Market. And they met there just to discuss what products were allowed and what products were prohibited. Really, for the first time at that meeting in 2019, Mr. Java became aware of certain pricing requirements that had changed as a result of the new regulations. And at that meeting, he was asked to remove that Fronto leaf, that big leaf I just sent you, as being a prohibited product. If he wasn't told that, he wouldn't know otherwise, and there would have been nothing he could have looked to determine whether or not that leaf was allowable or not. Similarly, at that same meeting, he was also told Fronto cigars, not Fronto leaf, Fronto cigars were also they
were allowed. At that meeting, Fronto cigars, they were allowed, and this Grabba cigar was allowed.
Yes, and the Grabba cigar that we're here on a violation for tonight was allowed at that time. Now, that's 2019. So this same cigar that we're now being told in the violation notice of November 9th of 2021, all of a sudden became impermissible. There was no way for us to know that it was impermissible because on prior inspections, but the inspection in 2019 and then a subsequent inspection in 2020, this same cigar was on the shelf. So it's a little unfair. If you're gonna come in and give citations for certain things, cite everything. Don't cite this thing and then 2 years later come back and say now it's a violation. I got you. It's just not simply not fair. So what we're really doing is we're looking for relief tonight, primarily because of the lack of clarity in the Mashpee regulations, and that there's no list to look to determine what is permissible and what is not permissible. I kind of skipped through it a little quickly. So in November 2019, this cigar that was on display was allowable. In 2020, when Mr. Collette did his inspection, that's the county inspector, this cigar was on display as sale, and it was not determined to be impermissible. Fast forward to November 19th, 2021, Mr. Collette comes in to do an inspection, and he now determines that two things are now impermissible. This one here that had been on display for a couple of years, the cigar, at least that's what the manufacturer says it is, and if you pull it apart, it's glued together. It's pieces of tobacco leaf glued together. Right, so you call them. It's not really, it doesn't really meet the definition in your regulations of a blunt wrap. And apparently, as I read in the minutes, the definition of blunt wrap was supposed to be expanded to include Fronto leaves and Fronto cigars, but I don't see it in the regulations. Although it was passed at a meeting, I don't believe it ever made its way into your regulations, but you can correct me, Mr. Chairman, if I'm incorrect on that. So on November 19th, he comes in and says, you can't sell the Grava cigar.
Fronto cigar.
November 19th of 2021, I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And you can't sell the Grava cigar, and you can't sell natty wraps. Okay? And so he says, remove them from the shelves. So Mr. Java removes them from the shelves. Come to find out that natty wraps are something that you can sell. And I think
gotten the approval.
He had already gotten the approval from the local Board of Health that so there was inconsistency there between the guy that does the inspection and issues the violations and our own board.
All right, let me jump in for a sec, Attorney Mills.
You could address that.
The natty wrap you're talking about is hemp. It is not a tobacco product, so it doesn't meet the definition anywhere within our regulations. So the natty wraps were approved because they are not a tobacco product.
Yes, but Mr. Collette, the inspection officer who issues the violations, said they were impermissible.
That's not true. That's not true, because I checked with him on these. Before I gave my answer to Mr. Java, I checked with him and he's agreed with me. So I don't know where that came from, because I did check with Mr. Collette when I gave the approval for the natty wrap, because it is hemp-based and not tobacco. And this product here is a loosely rolled Fronto King cigar, and this was what the original November 19, the April 23rd violation was for. And it is a very soft, loosely rolled leaf that you can unspread to put other material in. So, and it is the exact same, because Mr. Java brought in a same type of package of the Graba Empire, and it is exactly the same. It is soft, you can pull it apart, it is the exact same type of tobacco. And I looked it up on the internet, and I provided that information to you as well, and it's described the exact same way as the Fronto cigar, which is actually a loosely rolled so-called cigar, but it is actually a leaf. And the whole tobacco industry is causing so much confusion, and this is a Dutch leaf. And Mr. Java brought this to us and asked, is this okay? And I checked with Bob Collette, and Mr. Collette said, yes, it's okay. And the reason why it's okay is because it is a hard rolled cigar. So here the tobacco industry is saying that they're calling this a leaf, but yet it is a hard rolled cigar that does not fall apart, that cannot be pulled apart and used as a blunt wrap. So there is not just confusion, there is forced confusion by the tobacco industry on how to say that they are deceiving and making it difficult for the regulators and also for the public to say what is and what is not a blunt wrap. So again, I challenge the fact that the Fronto King and that was used as the violation back in April of 19 is exactly the same as the Graba Empire product that was brought to us and also cited as the violation.
I can clarify, because without being able to physically see the products themselves, it's rather difficult for me to really get a sense, because looking at the package that you displayed, Attorney Mills, I mean, it clearly indicates it as a cigar, but Glenn, you're saying that, and you also mentioned that the product couldn't be pulled apart, it's glued together, but Glenn, you're saying that the product is soft, and does Grava, do they sell multiple products? Is there a potential confusion there that, you know, is the Grava leaf, is it a cigar or is it a wrap? Like,
Well, at this point, I would recommend that, if we can get a sample of the product to the board, and the board members can come by the office and look at it specifically before they make the determination, which I think would be worthy. It is difficult to show on a remote basis. But I think that once the board members see what was originally issued before as they called it a Fronto cigar, but it is loosely rolled leaves, is the exact same product as the Grava Empire that was cited on this occasion.
The Grava Empire fresh cigar is remnants or pieces of tobacco leaf that are actually glued together. So all appearances are that it might be like the big leaf that I showed you, but it's actually glued together, like all cigars, quite frankly. So first appearances may be deceiving because it is glued. It isn't full leaves packed together. Go ahead, Mr. Java.
Good evening, the honorable members of the board. My name is Mansoor Java, and I'm the operator at Mashpee Shell for the last almost 20 years. I will give you a brief background of this product, which is known as Grava Empire and the Fronto King. Now, back in 2019, when I requested Mr. Glenn, and on my behalf, he requested Mr. Bob Collette to come to the store and advise us as to what products are permissible in the town of Mashpee and what are not. They were there along with other two retailers from the town of Mashpee. At that juncture, Mr. Bob Collette advised us that we cannot sell Fronto King leaf. Let me explain that to you, that Fronto King is one company that makes cigars and the leaves and cigarillos and whatnot, and Grava Empire is another company. Like Philip Morris is a company that makes Marlboros, and Winston is made by RJR, two different companies. At that point, Mr. Bob Collette advised us that in the town of Mashpee, you cannot sell the leaf. And he categorically mentioned that we cannot sell Fronto King leaf. So we removed it in his presence and sent it back to the vendor. At that point in time, we had a Fronto cigar and this Grava Empire cigar. Later on, he said that we cannot even sell the Fronto King cigar. However, you can sell this Grava Empire. Now, since 2019, until his most recent visit, on November 9, 2021, that's when he brought this up to us, and he said, you cannot sell this, and also Natty wraps. Now, let me give you a brief introduction of the Natty wrap. When Natty representatives approached me to carry their product, because the rest of the state was carrying their product, I said, I will not carry the product until and unless I have the blessings from my Board of Health. And I presented that to Mr. Glenn in his office, and I sought for his advice. He sent me an email after consulting with Mr. Bob Collette that this is permissible. We started carrying it. And when on November 9, 2021, Mr. Bob Collette was in my store, and he asked us to remove this fresh cigar made by Grava Empire. At the same time, he advised us to remove Natty as well. So we removed that. Is Mr. Glenn unaware of this thing? Because after that, I went to Mr. Glenn's office and I requested him with the other products which said leaf, because prior to that, Toronto King people, they came to my store and they said that we have the certification from FDA and we have the certification from the state of Massachusetts that our product is permissible. It is not a wrap. And I said, I will not carry it until and unless. Let me explain that, Mr. Glenn. And I said, I will not carry it until and unless I have an approval from my town, because in the past, retailers like me, they had been having issue with your product. So I sent a fax along with the certification by the state and by FDA, and the list of the products that Toronto King Company was offering. And in response to that, Mr. Glenn sent me an email, the Java. I will read the contents of that email for your reference. They're right here. Mr. Glenn said that I have received opinions from Bob Collette at Barnstable County and others regarding the FDA's letter on Toronto products. The letter contains a list of Toronto King products that are not considered flavored. The list does not mention the fact that some of the products are wraps or blunts, which are prohibited in Mashpee. On the list, number 1 through 7 and 9 are described as a leaf or a wrap, which would be considered a blunt. I never carried that product. Further to that, Mr. Glenn wrote, please do not sell those products that are a wrap or a leaf in Mashpee. Now, when Mr. Bob Collette visited me on the 9th of September 2021, he never objected to the other products that Mr. Glenn just showed the board. I once more reached out to Mr. Glenn because when Mr. Bob Collette is not objecting to those products, whereas Mr. Glenn is writing in his email not to carry any product that is a leaf. That's wherein I brought those products to Mr. Glenn's perusal and his advice to me. As of today, I haven't heard anything back from Mr. Glenn, neither from Mr. Glenn nor from Mr. Bob Collette. But I am not carrying those products with an apprehension that I may be cited for that, since I haven't heard back from neither Mr. Bob Collette nor from Mr. Glenn. I returned the product. And at the same time, the same natty product that Mr. Bob Collette asked us to remove, I have already returned it to the vendor. Other stores in Mashpee, they're still selling it. Now, when it comes to Fronto products, other stores in Mashpee, they're selling it. So, and my only concern was when I visited Mr. Glenn Harrington in his office, I requested him, Mr. Glenn, I want to be on the same page that you and Mr. Bob Collette are. Please advise us. I want to be in compliance. I do not want to be in violation. Every time there was a new product, I brought it back to Mr. Glenn to seek his advice, to seek his blessing. And now Mr. Glenn is not aware of the fact that Mr. Bob Collette has already asked me to remove the same product that is known as Natty Wrap, whereas the other retailers in Mashpee Town, they're still selling it. And they're still selling the Fronto product that Mr. Glenn mentioned in his email to me.
Well, I would like to, what I would like to do with this is, and I would also like to give my fellow board members opportunity to jump in here. I just want to make sure that we have some clarification on the line of the communications on these things, because I don't have those in front of me. I mean, we're talking about dates and, conversations. I think it would be beneficial to the members of the board, particularly because they haven't been here through the other violations, that would spell out, what conversations were had when, the emails that go along with those things, so we can get a better sense of what the timeline is. Because I think part of the, I think that confusion over the definition of some of these products does contribute to what's going on here. So I want to better understand what information was given to you, Mr. Java, and when that information was given to you, so that we can, kind of get a better sense. Because if you were told, and if you have some sort of evidence of those communications through emails or something like that, so that we could actually see those things. If you were told that those products were okay at some point and then now they're not, I want to get some sort of, for lack of a better word, evidence to that effect, so that we're not just, talking back, because we have, minimal information to that in front of us. And as I said, this is we're going back to 2019 and some of this, so I just want to make sure we're kind of all on the same page on that. The other thing is that I would really like to get give the board members the opportunity to make an objective assessment of the product in question, because as you said, Attorney Mills, there is some subjectivity in the way that the regulation is worded that I've never appreciated, and I was hesitant to list any specific products in the regulation, because then when a new product comes along, unless we're able to continuously adapt our regulation to those new products coming down the line, it's impossible to have them all caught up. So those are the two things that I would like to propose, is that we take a look at, some of the facts about the communications that have occurred in relation to this, specifically, and to give the board members an opportunity to make an objective assessment of the products for themselves, to make a determination on whether this particular product would, to the common person, would be interpreted as a leaf or as a cigar. And then before we make any kind of decision, I don't personally feel that I have enough information to render any sort of decision this evening. But I would like to give my board members some opportunity to respond to what they've heard tonight.
Thank you. May I be heard on that, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So with respect to this grab a cigar, there won't be any express discussions or emails concerning it. The point of it is that this had been for sale and on display for almost 3 years now, and survived, and everything in that store. I don't know if you've ever been to the store or not, but every single product that he sells tobacco-wise is in clear view. It's in clear view because he wants to sell it. This particular product here has survived 3 years of inspections by Mr. Collette in plain view. And now all of a sudden, in November of 2021, it becomes impermissible. So there's not going to be a lot of emails about this product. The fact is that it was either he didn't believe it was impermissible at the time, and then all of a sudden, some 2 years later after he's carrying it, it becomes impermissible. That's not fair. That's simply not fair.
Mm-hmm.
So, go ahead.
And I would agree with that. And perhaps in lieu of those documented communications, maybe invoices or something demonstrating that you had purchased those products 2 years ago, just so that, we know that they were in the store at that point, and were perhaps, not identified at that time, would kind of help to clear up some of the confusion, if you'd be willing to look back at your records and present, invoices that show that you purchased those products from your distributor, just so that we can, sort of verify that they were on the shelf at that point. Otherwise, we're just kind of going on, well, yeah, it was here. I mean, I've never been in your store personally. I can't verify that without some sort of, documented evidence to that effect. So, but I would like to give Kripani and Ernie an opportunity to, if they would like, ask any questions or comment at this point.
Ernie, would you like to go first?
Well, this is my first understanding of this particular situation. And I clearly do not have a recommendation of any kind. At this point, I mean, we're talking way before I was here, and having to have this conversation tonight, it's okay with me, but I need to educate myself and be more intelligent on what's behind it, what I need to look into, read, and look at material. I can't just, continue to have thoughts unless I can understand my thoughts. I'm sorry, but at this point, I need some time to understand this better. I mean, I wasn't here, folks. I wasn't here. And I'm not talking for Bonnie. She wasn't here either. But, it's my comment, Mr. Chairman.
And bear in mind that we're here to consider the current violation, not the past violations. So that's the critical piece of it. Yeah. My proposal is to try to clarify the information with respect to this particular violation, so that I think, yeah. Go ahead.
I'm not talking about the previous violation. Let me clear that right now.
Okay.
I'm talking about the subject that I don't understand. They're two different factors. I am not a smoker. Never have been. Okay. That's what I'm talking about. Not the any violations.
Okay.
I want to clear here on that right now.
All right. Thank you for clarifying. Thank you.
So my comments kind of lie between what Ernie and Brian have mentioned. I was thinking the same thing that Brian mentioned, where I would like to see the evidence behind it, such as the invoices and stuff, because we don't have that conversational proof to kind of justify what has happened between the owner and Mr. Collette and Glenn. So, of course, I'm kind of new to the whole, what's sellable and what's not, or what's legal or not to sell. So this is all new to me, but, kind of hearing the conversation and hearing everyone's communication about this, I kind of was looking at Graba Empire, and I was looking at the fact that they do indeed have the tobacco leaf, similar looking to the packaging that Glenn showed, and then the cigar package that Mr. Attorney Mills showed too. So we have these two different things, and we're talking about that loose leaf. So yeah, I would like to see an invoice to see that. Did you actually purchase this product? Because they look more or less the same. So if Attorney Mills is showing us a cigar package and we're talking about a loose leaf, they sell both of these packages. And this is right out of Sagamore Beach that I'm looking at. So if you are purchasing these products and they've been there from 2019 or not, we can't really justify that right now based on this conversation. So yeah, I would definitely like to see those invoices, because that's our best proof that we have if we're talking about historically, and the violation is happening right now. So from the face value, I can see both of these right now. They look the same to me. If we're turning the package over, that's when we see the real difference between a loose leaf versus a cigar. So that's my comment on that, and I don't want to take a further decision on this until we have that proof.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may still,
Please.
And I'm still looking at the same minutes, and I would ask you to maybe consider and refresh your memory concerning, and I don't know if your position has changed or not, but I know your position back then is that what really is at issue here is the definition or lack of definition of a blunt wrap. And I know you felt at the time that it shouldn't be considered prohibited products until the definition of a blunt wrap is specifically defined, so that somebody has notice of what they're being accused of violating. Okay. And I think even in respect to Mr. Harrington, I think even back then, and this is a few years ago, so memories fade, I think it was Glenn's position that particular Fronto cigars and cigarillos shouldn't be considered blunt wraps because they can't be unraveled. So, you know, nothing could be added to them. So it's a fine line. It's a fine line.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I would like the opportunity to clarify on some of these things. So.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may say something, please.
Sure. Yes, please.
I'm reading the minutes of the meeting. That was at the Mashpee Town Hall. It was Mr. Harrington's opinion that these particular Fronto cigars and cigarillos should not be considered blunt wraps because they cannot be unraveled, so nothing can be added to them. Mr. Langler expressed some confusion as to why blunt wraps would be categorized as a prohibited product and not other rolling papers, and apologize for not asking the question at the time of the regulation. Reading it from the minutes of the meeting.
Right. Well, and that's in relation to the first violation, though. We're not talking about the Fronto cigars here. We're talking about the Grava Empire cigars.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Also, please note that sometimes back in 2020, during the annual compliance check, when Mr. Collette was there, he never mentioned that. And I asked him, sorry, sir?
He never mentioned what?
He never mentioned any product because that was still there for sale. He never asked me to remove. It's not permissible.
If you did have this particular product, what I would like to do is, if you did have this particular product, Grava leaf, Empire leaf, that we're referring to tonight, if you did have it on the shelf, you know, during this prior period where, you know, it's clear that tobacco inspections were done and that those products were not identified at that point, what I'd like to just see is receipts demonstrating that you had those products on the shelf so that they were overlooked, because that definitely would inform my decision as to whether you would have knowingly had a product on the shelf that shouldn't have been there or not. Because if we haven't told you it shouldn't be there, I can't expect you to not have it there. And the other piece that I want to look at is to have an opportunity to look at the product myself to try to make some determination as to whether a common person looking at this product would say, this is something that could be unrolled and would fit the definition, the Mashpee definition of a blunt wrap or not. So those are the two things that I want to do, is just clarify those points before I'm willing to make any judgment on this. And I'd like to avoid the discussion on the Fronto leaf because that's, although I did participate on that board, those are past decisions that have been made, and I don't feel that those are relevant to this particular discussion. I want to stick strictly to the Grava Empire leaf discussion for this.
May I just, as a point of clarification, Mr. Chairman, the violation says Grava Empire leaf for sale. And then it says, well, this nowhere says it's a Grava. It's not a Grava Empire leaf. And it doesn't say it on the package. It's a Grava Empire fresh cigar. The one I showed you and unrolled, that's a leaf. So even the violation is incorrect because it's not a leaf. It's a cigar.
Right, and that's why I want to. That's why I want to look at the product myself. You know, because there's a difference between looking at it. It says cigar. I mean, there are a lot of cases where they put cigar on it, and it's not a cigar. It's a wrap. It can be taken apart. Or in the opposite, they have things that are identified as leaves that can't be taken apart. So to me, I just want to be able to hold it in my hands and take a look at it before I make any judgment as to whether, you know, whether or not it fits that definition. I'm just going on the information I have tonight, which was that the product that was on the shelf was Grava Empire leaf. You're telling me that we have Grava Empire cigar. That's why I think the clarification is the receipts that show what exactly this product is, because I don't think we can't make any decision based on the information that we have. I just want to clarify those things before we make any judgment on it, one way or the other.
Fair enough.
I mean, to me, if this is all a product of confusion between the vendor and you know, what products, how they're defined, or where this fits, we certainly want to make sure that we're not instituting fines and suspensions where they're not appropriate. So I do want to take a hard look at it before rendering any sort of judgment on it. I would like that opportunity.
Okay. Thank you.
Maybe please keep carrying the natty product, or we cannot, Mr. Glenn?
I'm sorry?
Can we still carry the natty product or not? What is your advice on that? Because Mr. Bob Collette said, no, we cannot carry it.
I'll double check with Bob, but my recollection is that it was not a tobacco product, that it could be carried, but I will clarify that with him.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I would look for a motion to continue this discussion to, do we want to say the next meeting, or do we want to set a less defined timeline to give us ample opportunity to, collect the information that we're looking for? You want to do a continuance to the next meeting, Ernie and Kripani?
No.
Yes.
I don't know where I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think that gives us almost 2 weeks worth of time for them to gather this stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, that sounds good.
Mr. Chairman, as part of my presentation, I had actually a written presentation. May I email that to be included as part of the record?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. These times of Zoom definitely make these types of things much more difficult. Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, thank you very much. Thanks.
I make a motion to continue the review for the tobacco sales violation at 135 Main Street for Omar Inc. to the next hearing.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much for your patience and waiting through our whole agenda this evening, and we'll talk again at our next.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Very much. Okay. That's that. I think we've covered everything on our public session agenda. Please correct me if I'm wrong, Glenn. We kind of jumped around here, so I want to make sure we didn't miss anything. I think we got everything.
Yeah, we got everything.
Okay. We do have executive session on the agenda. Do we need executive session this evening?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I will be recusing myself from the session.
Okay. So then I would look for a motion to...
I see no need to
what was that again, Ernie? I'm sorry.
I see no need to return after the session.
Okay. Okay. Look for a motion to adjourn public session, to go into executive session, not to return to public session. I hope I got that right, Glenn, because I mess it up. I feel like...
Yeah, that's fine.
We'll do it by roll call vote.
Yeah, but I don't have to vote in this. I'm just recusing myself.
Right. You're not going to go into the executive, but we still have to adjourn public session. So we do.
Okay.
You do participate in that piece. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So I make a motion to adjourn public session, and so is it two motions or just one motion that I can say?
It's one. So it's adjourn public session, go into executive session, not to return to public session.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So I make a motion to adjourn public session and go into executive session and not to be returned to public session.
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye. Kripani Patel.
Aye, Ernie Virgilio.
Aye. Brian Fox.
Yes. Now I recuse myself from this session. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ernie.
And
have a good night. In a couple weeks.
Yes. Have a good night.